I live in a small blue craftsman house on 38th Avenue in Seattle, Washington. It isn't fancy, but it's mine. 3 years ago, I signed the mortgage papers with shaking hands and a proud heart. $642,000, 30 years fixed rate. Every month when I click Submit Payment, I remember that nobody helped me buy it. Not my parents, not my sisters, not anyone. It's just me and my daughter, Maya, building a life that finally feels steady. The front yard is narrow but bright, with a white picket fence and a tiny cherry tree that still tries to bloom every spring. Inside, the walls are filled with Maya's drawings, castles, rainbows, and a stick figure version of us holding hands. Every time I look at them, I remember why I work late, why I save every extra dollar, and why I keep trying even when I'm exhausted. This Saturday was supposed to be perfect. Maya was turning 9, and I'd promised her the best birthday I could manage. For weeks, I'd budgeted carefully, stretching grocery savings, skipping takeout, and cutting my own hair instead of going to the salon, so I could afford her dream party, a bounce house, a princess cake, and pink everything. At dawn, I blew up balloons until my fingers cramped. 9 of them, because 9 mattered. I tied them to the fence posts and strung paper crowns along the picnic table. I used dollar store napkins folded neatly into shapes that looked almost royal. The smell of frosting filled the air from the vanilla cake I'd ordered, $1.55 for a pixel princess design that made Maya squeal when she saw it. By 10:30, the backyard looked magical. The bounce house stood tall, its pink turrets gleaming in the fall sunlight. Lemonade waited in pitchers, fruit cups sparkled with berries, and pretzel bags sat neatly beside paper plates. I even rented a cotton candy machine for $45 because I wanted her to feel loved, not lacking. I texted my mother, Linda, and my sisters, Emily and Vanessa, reminding them to come early to help. They'd promised, as always. Mom said she'd bring her famous deviled eggs. Emily said she'd handle decorations, and Vanessa claimed she'd bring extra snacks. But as I checked my watch, 11:42, I got a different kind of message. My phone buzzed. A photo lit the screen. The 3 of them smiling at a waterfront brunch, mimosas raised high, with the caption, "Family time." The glassware glittered like mockery. No call, no text, no apology, just that. A moment later, Emily sent a message. "We'll swing by later. Save us cake." 3 heart emojis and a sparkle, as if that erased the sting. I stood there for a minute, watching the pink balloons sway gently in the breeze, feeling something collapse quietly inside me. But then Maya appeared in the doorway, her silver sneakers flashing, her eyes bright. "Do you think Grandma will like my bow?" she asked, twirling in her pink dress. I forced a smile and nodded. "She'll love it," I said, though my voice caught a little. I fixed the bow so it sat straight, and she grinned like the sun had never hidden behind a cloud. By noon, the yard filled with laughter. Neighbors came, Mrs. Alvarez from next door, who brought her famous cinnamon rolls, and Daniel, her husband, who helped inflate the bounce house. Maya's classmates arrived, squealing as they ran across the grass. Their parents complimented the setup, saying how beautiful everything looked. I thanked them, hiding the ache behind my practiced hostess smile. The hours flew by in a blur of pink frosting and happy shrieks. For a while, I forgot the empty spaces at the table meant for my family. I forgot the brunch picture and the champagne smiles. Watching Maya jump, laugh, and chase bubbles, I reminded myself that her joy, was what mattered. By 4 o'clock, the sun dipped low, and the last guests waved goodbye. I stacked paper plates, gathered wrapping paper, and packed leftover slices of cake into small boxes. One for Mom, one for Emily, one for Vanessa. I knew they wouldn't come, but I couldn't stop myself. Hope has a way of lingering longer than it should. When the yard was quiet again, I sat on the back steps, watching the deflating bounce house slowly sink into silence. My phone buzzed. A new group message from Vanessa appeared. "Hey, we need your share for Kayla's sweet party. Venue deposit due Monday, $3, $200 total. Send $1,066 tonight, please. It'll be epic." "No, how is the party?" No, sorry we missed it. Nothing. Just another request for money. I stared at the message, numb. Over the years, I had lost count of how many emergencies I had covered. Emily's rent, Vanessa's car repairs, Mom's dental work that somehow turned into a Vegas trip. Every time I said yes, they promised to pay me back. Every time they didn't. I opened my banking app. My balance wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. I had $2,800 in checking, $1,200 in savings, and a mortgage payment due in 10 days. I thought about the bounce house, the cake, and the pink dress. About the way Maya's face had glowed today, and how it might fade if she ever realized how her family treated us. Something inside me hardened, like ice forming on still water. I scrolled through the group chat one more time, then opened my banking app again. This time, I typed in a number, $1. In the memo line I wrote, "Congrats." Then I hit send. It felt small and enormous all at once. A single dollar, a simple word, a quiet refusal after years of silent compliance. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. "Vanessa, what's this?" "Emily, are you serious?" "Mom, don't be petty. Family helps family." I put my phone face down and walked into the kitchen. I poured a glass of lemonade, the kind Maya liked, and sat at the table with her. She was coloring a picture of herself inside the bounce house, crown slightly crooked, grin wide. "Did you have fun today?" I asked. She nodded. "It was the best day ever," she said, without hesitation. I smiled then, really smiled. Because maybe it was. Not just for her, but for me too. The day I realized that love shouldn't feel like debt. Later, when she fell asleep with frosting still on her cheek, I walked through the quiet house. The air smelled faintly of sugar and grass. I took the leftover cake boxes to the fridge, knowing no one would pick them up. The pink balloons had begun to sag, the strings hanging limp, but they still looked lovely in the soft evening light. I stood by the window for a while, watching the sky turn gold and lavender over Seattle's rooftops. My reflection looked tired, but lighter somehow. My heart hurt, but in a clean way, as if something had finally been rinsed free. That night, as the house settled into silence, I made a promise to myself. No more excuses. No more guilt. I had spent years giving to people who only saw my worth in dollars. From now on, my energy would go where it was appreciated, toward Maya, toward peace, toward myself. And with that, I turned off my phone, switched off the kitchen light, and let the house, my house, rest. The world outside could brunch, gossip, and demand all it wanted. But inside these walls, I had already chosen something better. Peace. The morning after Maya's birthday, I woke up to the faint smell of frosting and balloons rubbing against each other in the hallway. The house felt quiet, too quiet. For a moment, I thought about texting my mom again, asking if everything was okay. But then I remembered the brunch photo, the mimosas, the fake smiles, and the message about the $3,200 sweet party deposit. My chest tightened. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I made a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, sunlight pouring across the paperwork I'd been avoiding for years. A brown folder sat there, thick with receipts, transfers, and screenshots. I'd been collecting them slowly, almost unconsciously. Each time I sent money, I knew I'd never see again. It was time to face it all. Inside were records going back nearly 6 years. $400 for Emily's car repair, which turned out to be a spa weekend in Napa. $1,200 for Vanessa's move, which became a down payment on her boyfriend's motorcycle. $900 for Mom's 2-week bridge to cover rent, which stretched into almost a year of silence. I totaled the numbers carefully, $18,340. I whispered it aloud, and it hit like a confession. Scrolling through my phone, I found a recent charge from a streaming platform I'd never used, $35 every month, for 16 months. My name was listed as a sponsor for my cousin Tyler's gaming channel. I never gave permission. I clicked cancel subscription, then said the number out loud again, $560. Saying it helped me feel the weight of what I'd allowed. I exhaled slowly and finally felt something loosen in my jaw. By noon, I'd made my decision. I was changing the locks. The locksmith arrived an hour later, a friendly older man named Rick, who reminded me of the kind of dad I used to wish I had. "Smart move," he said when I told him why. "People think boundaries are walls. Really, they're doors that only open for respect." I nodded, even though my throat tightened at his words. The service cost $185, money well spent. Mrs. Alvarez from next door spotted Rick's van and came over holding a tray of cinnamon rolls, her gray hair tucked under a floral scarf. "New locks?" she asked, her eyes kind but curious. "Just tightening up the house a bit," I said. She gave me a knowing smile. "Good. You can't let people treat your piece like it's public property." Her husband, Daniel, came out with a small toolkit. "Need a hand at the gate?" he offered. I hesitated, but he insisted. Maya followed him outside, holding the oil can like an assistant, her laughter echoing against the fence. I stood at the window, watching her learn something useful, something simple, something solid. By evening, the locks were new, the hinges quiet, and the house felt like mine again. I poured a second cup of coffee and sat back down at the table. I opened my phone to a storm of messages. "Emily, why did you cancel the monthly support for Tyler's channel? That's cruel. Vanessa, after all we've done for you, you're acting like a stranger. Mom, if your father were alive, he'd be ashamed of you. Family doesn't turn its back like this." I stared at her words, then looked at the photo of my dad that sat on the shelf near the coffee pot. He'd been gone 10 years, but I remembered his last real advice: learn to hold your own line, even if they call you cold for it. I closed the messages without replying. Some silences are stronger than explanations. Around 9 that night, a pair of headlights swept across my living room window. Then came the slow, deliberate sound of car doors closing. I peered through the curtain and froze. A police cruiser. 2 officers walked up the path, flashlights low. Mrs. Alvarez was already on her porch, her arms crossed protectively. When the officers knocked, I opened the door halfway. "Ma'am," the younger one said gently, "we received a call about a possible welfare check. A family member said you might be in distress or being threatened." I almost laughed. "No, officer. I'm fine. I just changed my locks and canceled a few financial favors. Apparently, that counts as an emergency." They exchanged looks, then asked to step inside. I showed them my folder, the receipts, the messages, the canceled subscriptions. I told them about the $1 I'd sent with congrats. The older officer nodded slowly, his voice steady. "You're within your rights. Nobody can demand access to your home or money. If they show up uninvited, call us. You've done nothing wrong." As they left, Mrs. Alvarez called out, "You good, honey?" "Yes," I said, smiling faintly. "Better, actually." Once the cruiser drove away, I turned to see Maya standing at the end of the hallway in her pajamas, the ones with the silver stars on the knees. Her hair was messy, her eyes sleepy but worried. "Mom, why were the police here?" she asked quietly. I sat on the couch and motioned for her to come closer. She climbed into my lap, small and warm, the weight of her head grounding me. "Because sometimes grown-ups forget how to be kind," I said softly. "But it's okay now. I fixed it." She frowned, tracing the pattern on my sleeve. "Did I do something wrong?" I shook my head. "No, sweetheart. The wrong thing was done to us. And I decided not to let it keep happening." Her eyes fluttered closed within minutes. I carried her to bed, tucked her under the blanket, and watched her sleep for a long time. She looked peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in years. When I finally went back to the living room, the air felt lighter, like the house itself had exhaled. The new locks gleamed faintly under the hallway light, solid and unbothered. I sat on the couch, the brown folder beside me, and made one last decision before bed. From now on, every dollar would have a purpose that made sense to me, not to guilt, not to manipulation, not to family pressure. I opened my notebook and wrote a short list of goals. 1. Build an emergency fund, $5,000 by year's end. 2. Start a braces fund for Maya, $150 a month. 3. Set boundaries that don't need defending. I smiled at that last one. Boundaries that don't need defending. Maybe someday I'd get there. But for now, tonight was enough. Outside, the city hummed quietly. Somewhere, my sisters were probably messaging each other, plotting guilt, maybe calling mom again. Let them. I didn't owe them access anymore. When I turned off the lights and locked the door for the night, the click of the new bolt sounded different. Steady, certain, final. It wasn't the sound of shutting people out. It was the sound of protecting what I'd built. And for the first time in years, I slept straight through the night. Monday morning started like any other, gray sky, weak coffee, and the hum of traffic outside my little house on 38th Avenue. But inside, I felt strangely calm. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon from Mrs. Alvarez's rolls the night before. I dropped Maya off at school, kissed her forehead, and promised to pick her up early for her art class. She smiled and waved before running through the doors, her pink backpack bouncing against her shoulders. By the time I reached my office near South Lake Union, I'd already seen the damage. A coworker, James, leaned over my cubicle wall and said, "Hey, you should probably check Facebook." I froze. His voice was careful, the way people talk when they don't want to embarrass you but have to tell you anyway. I opened my phone and saw it. My sisters had posted a long, emotional rant about family betrayal. Emily wrote that I'd become greedy, that I refused to help with Kayla's birthday, and that I had forgotten who raised me. Vanessa commented under it, painting herself as the saint who tried to keep the peace. My mother's name was tagged, along with photos of them smiling together at what looked like another brunch. Thousands of words spilled out in the comments. Strangers argued over my character as if I were a public figure. Some defended them, saying the family should stick together. Others questioned why grown women were broadcasting private matters online. Still, the damage was done. My name was dragged through the mud, and my inbox filled with messages, half pity, half judgment. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. My stomach twisted. After all the times I'd bailed them out, after the $18,000 in quiet loans and the years of keeping peace, they were now painting me as the villain. At lunch, James set his salad on the table beside me. "They're lying," he said quietly. "Anyone who knows you knows that." I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "It's not even about what they said," I finally whispered. "It's that they had no problem saying it." He handed me a napkin. "Then it's time to write your story, not theirs." His words stuck with me. That night, after tucking Maya into bed, I sat at my desk and called Uncle Robert in Boston. He'd always been the one person in the family who treated me with fairness. A retired union steward, he believed in paper trails and truth. When I told him everything, he listened without interrupting. "Do it on paper," he said firmly. "Emails get ignored, calls get twisted. But letters, they last. Write your boundaries down, keep a copy, and send them certified. You can't argue with ink." After we hung up, I brewed tea and pulled out my laptop. The glow from the screen filled the room as I began drafting 3 letters, one for each of them. The words came slowly at first, then stronger with every sentence. I wrote that I had kept records of every financial transaction and had attached copies for their reference. I made it clear that I was no longer providing financial support or loans to any adult family member. I reminded them that all prior amounts were unpaid and future requests would be declined without discussion. I stated that all contact about Maya must go through me directly, in writing. No more guilt calls or manipulative messages. And most of all, I wrote that there would be no key under my doormat ever again. Each word felt like a step out of quicksand. When I was done, I printed them, signed them, and slipped them into crisp white envelopes. The post office clerk raised an eyebrow when I asked for certified mail with tracking on all 3. "Making it official?" she asked with a knowing smile. "Yes," I said. "Very official." Each letter cost $7.25 to send. That was $21.75, which I would never regret spending. The next day, I opened a new savings account for Maya's braces. I transferred $150 immediately and set an automatic deposit every Friday. Then, remembering the dentist's warning about her crossbite, I moved $4,800 from my emergency fund into a medical savings account. It felt good to see numbers grow instead of shrink. I also canceled 2 streaming services we rarely used, saving $28 a month, and sold my unused bike on a neighborhood app for $220. When the buyer drove off with it, I felt lighter, as if I'd sold a piece of the guilt that had kept me cycling in emotional circles. By midweek, a small but powerful change had begun in our lives. Maya came home from school smiling wider than usual. Her teacher, Miss Parker, called that evening to tell me something that made my eyes sting. She told me about her birthday, Miss Parker said softly. And when one of the kids asked why her grandma didn't come, she said, "It's okay, I had my real friends there." She handled it with grace. I bit my lip to stop it from trembling. "Thank you for telling me," I whispered. Miss Parker continued. "Also, one of the PTA moms, Denise, has an extra costume from the school play. She said Maya can have it. And there's a small grant program for art lessons. Maya qualifies. Would you like me to nominate her?" "Yes," I said, my voice thick. "Please." 2 days later, I got the email confirming the grant, $300 for 10 weeks of art lessons. Maya drew her first picture that night, a seagull flying across a bright blue sky, wings spread wide, the word "free" written in uneven letters underneath. She taped it above her bed before falling asleep. Meanwhile, the online storm refused to die. My sisters posted vague quotes about betrayal and fake relatives, each one thinly veiled. My mother shared a picture of herself holding a Bible, captioned, "God sees everything." I didn't respond. I didn't block them either. I just muted the noise and focused on what was real. One evening, Mrs. Alvarez sent me a picture message, a candid shot of Daniel teaching Maya how to fix the tire on her scooter. "She's a quick learner," the message said. I smiled, saving the photo. A few minutes later, Aunt Nora called from Oregon. She said she'd heard the family drama, but wanted me to know she was proud of me. "You can't feed people who only show up to eat your piece," she said. "Even at work, small kindnesses found me." James left a $75 grocery gift card on my desk with a sticky note, "For apples and pasta. You deserve easy dinners." I used it that night, stocking up on fresh fruit and frozen blueberries. As I unpacked the bags, I realized how different Real support felt. It wasn't loud or public. It didn't demand attention or repayment. It simply helped. The smears online kept floating, but they no longer reached me. They were like leaves drifting down a river I no longer swam in. I had letters on file, savings accounts growing, a daughter laughing again, and neighbors who cared. For the first time in years, my life was quiet. Not empty, just steady. And when I stood in the kitchen one night, sipping tea and staring at Maya's seagull drawing on the fridge, I finally understood something simple but powerful. Peace doesn't need applause. It only needs protection. December arrived like a blank page waiting for new ink. The cold air swept through Seattle, and for the first time in years, I didn't dread the holidays. I wasn't rushing to please anyone or stretching my budget to fit someone else's expectations. The house felt quieter, but in that quiet was comfort. I bought a small fir tree for $38 from a local lot, carried it home myself, and let Maya pick the decorations. She chose silver tinsel and small, uneven ornaments she made at school. We spent that night sipping cocoa, listening to old songs, and laughing about how crooked our star looked on top. I made a silent promise to myself, no flights, no guilt, and absolutely no debt. When invitations rolled in from family, I read them, smiled, and deleted each one. I said no to anything that felt like a trap, and yes to the little things that filled me with peace. One weekend, Maya and I volunteered at a food bank downtown. She stood on a stool, carefully stacking cans into perfect pyramids. "Does this count as art?" she asked with a grin. "It's the best kind," I told her. The group chat with my family had gone quiet since I mailed the boundary letters. But a few days before Christmas, it came alive again. Emily wrote that Grandma's heart was breaking because I hadn't visited. Vanessa chimed in that I was destroying the circle women in our family always kept. I stared at those messages, my hands steady for once. I thought about what that circle had really been, a cycle of guilt, debt, and silence. My house had been treated like an ATM, my kindness like a duty, my voice like an afterthought. I wasn't continuing that legacy. I typed one simple line, "I love you, but my answer is still no." Then I put my phone face down, grabbed my coat, and took Maya to the marina to see the holiday lights. The reflection of the boats shimmered across the water like glittering peace. Maya skipped ahead, her scarf bouncing behind her, and I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. By January, the shift was visible everywhere. My braces fund had grown to $1,800. The emergency savings sat at $5,300, and for the first time, I opened a small envelope labeled Home Joy. Every week, I tucked in $10 or $20 for small things that made life easier. A brighter porch bulb, a rug soft enough for movie nights, a latch for the gate that didn't stick when it rained. Peace had started showing up in the details. The smell of coffee in the morning, the hum of the heater, Maya's laughter echoing down the hallway. Even the silence of not hearing from my family felt like a luxury I didn't realize I'd been paying for all my life. Spring turned into summer, and life kept unfolding in soft, steady rhythms. I got a promotion at work, nothing flashy, just an acknowledgement that I'd carried projects through chaos and made them succeed. My new title was Senior Project Coordinator, and with it came a raise of $8,000 a year. I used the first check to pay down my car loan early. It felt symbolic, like cutting another string that once kept me tied down. Sometimes, late at night, I'd scroll through old messages from my sisters and mother. They still posted their brunch photos, their dramatic quotes about loyalty and forgiveness, their subtle jabs disguised as wisdom. But none of it stung anymore. I didn't owe them a response. I'd already paid my dues, with money, time, and sleepless nights. When October came again, Maya was almost 10. She'd grown taller, more confident, and braver in ways that made me proud. "Can we have a party again this year?" she asked one morning while eating cereal. "Of course," I said, smiling. "But only with people who make us happy." We planned it together, starting small. I rented the same bounce house again for $275 because joy deserves tradition. We made a guest list that included only our chosen family, people who had been there without asking for anything in return. Mrs. Alvarez and Daniel from next door, Aunt Nora, my coworker James, and Maya's teacher, Miss Parker. Even Uncle Robert joined via video call from Boston, promising to sing off-key again. The day of the party was perfect: crisp air, bright sunlight, and the smell of grilled hot dogs from the backyard. Mrs. Alvarez brought tamales, Daniel organized a beanbag game that had everyone laughing, and Miss Parker gifted Maya a pack of colored pencils with a note that read, "Keep drawing." James arrived with balloons and told Maya that good leaders always keep promises. She grinned at that. When I picked up the cake from the grocery store, I kept it simple. Just her name, no extra flowers, no messages, no show. Simplicity had become my luxury. As guests filled the yard, I noticed a familiar face walking up the path. It was the younger police officer from the year before. He smiled when he saw us. "I was on patrol in the area," he said. "Thought I'd check on my favorite bounce house." Maya laughed and handed him a paper crown napkin. He actually put it on and accepted a slice of cake. "How are things this year?" he asked. I smiled. "Better than last year." He nodded, looking around the yard. "It shows." That night, after everyone left and the bounce house began to deflate, Maya and I sat on the steps watching the last of the balloons drift lazily in the breeze. I handed her a clear savings jar and tucked $50 inside. Together, we counted her total, $430. She divided it the same way she always did. $10 for a donation, $10 for a book, and the rest for her braces and future. Watching her do it so confidently made my heart ache in the best way. Inside, the house glowed with soft yellow light. The kitchen smelled like sugar and cocoa. I took out a sheet of paper and wrote one last letter, not to my family, but to myself. It read, "No is a full sentence. Yes is a gift. Use both with care." I taped it inside the kitchen cabinet where I keep the mugs, so I'd see it every morning while making coffee. Standing on the porch later, I looked out at the quiet street. The balloons leaned toward the night sky like gentle guards. The city was calm, the stars faint above the distant hum of cars. I felt something rare, a steady kind of happiness that didn't need to be shared or proven. I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder if my family had finally seen the truth. That was no longer my concern. What mattered was the life unfolding right here. A warm house, a safe child, and a peace I'd earned the hard way. When I locked the front door that night, the click of the bolt echoed through the room like punctuation at the end of a long, hard sentence. I stood there for a moment, hand on the doorknob, smiling to myself. Then I turned off the light, climbed into bed beside my daughter, and fell asleep knowing that for the first time in my life, everything that mattered was right where it belonged.